Should Dominic Raab resign? The Foreign Secretary is under pressure to step down after failing to make a crucial call to his Afghan counterpart last week. Mr Raab was holidaying in Crete when senior aides told him to contact Foreign Minister Hanif Atmar. Now, it was thought that this call could have helped secure the safe passage of Afghan translators, but Mr Raab refused. And despite original claims that the call was made later by a junior minister, it emerged last night, you've had a look at this, that phone call never actually took place at all. Well, there are now reports that the Prime Minister could sack Mr Raab at the next reshuffle. So here's what Mr Raab, the Foreign Secretary, had to say when asked about his position yesterday.
Are you going to resign, Mr Raab?
Well, all of this comes as chaos continues. More gunshots were fired at Kabul airport as people try to get out. And this image from Sky News of a British soldier helping a baby is in many of the papers today. So, Martin, here's the question. Should Dominic Raab resign?
Well, undoubtedly, this is a bad look. To not take a call during the middle of a military evacuation, a huge humanitarian crisis, the Taliban are a grotesque, monstrous organisation, a medieval death cult. People are being shot in the streets for not wearing burqas. Women are being shot dead because of that reason. People are being shot dead for raising Afghan flags and taking the Taliban flag down. We have a disaster on our hands. This guy is meant to be at the helm. He's meant to be steadying the ship. He was missing in action. It's a terrible, terrible look. However, I think a resignation right now will just plunge the office into further chaos. And a good question is, well, who could take over? Is replacing one bad person with another bad person the right way to do it? So I think even though he's had a terrible, terrible match, he needs to be on the pitch because we just don't have time to change around now. We need boots on the ground. We need firm action. But he's I think, forever damaged by this.
Right, but he said, well, they've said, the government have said it wouldn't have made any difference. Do you buy that?
No, I don't buy that. And it's not always just about the outcome of something in politics. It's about the gesture. It's about treating people with respect. At a time of such calamity, you cannot say, I'm too busy, I'm on holiday, mate. Like everybody in an ordinary job would take an emergency phone call on holiday. Why not the Foreign Secretary? It's a terrible day at the office for him.
Well, it also begs the question, if somebody else was meant to take that call and didn't make that call, what the hell is going on within that office?
Well, calamity. And there are three of the senior civil servants also at the helm who are also on holiday. It's like some lads away day. Now, at the time when they're meant to be in control of this perilous, dark moments in history, and they're simply missing in action. Now, the Labour Party, of course, are trying to make hay out of this. They would do. But let's not forget Richard Bergen, a Labour MP yesterday, was saying, let's pay money to Afghanistan in reparations. That would mean paying money to the Taliban. And what would they spend that money on? Let's think about that. So both parties are having their own little crises over this, but I think he'll dodge the noose. I think he'll get away with it.
And Nicola, what do you feel?
Yeah, I feel like whether he should resign or not, Boris needs to tell us why he should stay in the job. Boris needs to come and speak out and tell us what went on with this phone call, why it wasn't made, why anyone wouldn't take time out of their holiday to make such an important call, and if it was delegated to someone else, why didn't that person make the call? Who is at fault here? Because someone's at fault, and Boris needs to step up and tell us. But I quite agree, resigning at the minute, is it the easy way out? Is it, what good is it going to do? Does he need to stay and rectify the mistake as best as possible? But watching the footage, I'm not sure that's going to be possible.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in presenter Matt Stadlen, who thinks Dominic Raab should resign. Morning, Matt. Tell us why.
Morning, Tricia. Martin and I don't always agree on everything on Twitter, but it's quite hard to disagree with much of what he said just then. The problem is this isn't just about a phone call and the optics of it and the fact that our Foreign Secretary did not deem it necessary for he himself to call his counterpart in Afghanistan at a moment of terrible crisis that possibly involved the lives, literally the lives, of the very people who have been assisting us in the fight against the Taliban, risking their lives over so many years. To me, if I understand it properly, that is disgusting, and that should be a resigning offence, whether or not it made any difference in practice. But it's not just about the phone call. It's also about the fact that he was on holiday. Never mind that it was a plush resort.
Matt, they're saying that this came out of the blue. Everyone was caught with their pants down, literally.
Well, it's just simply not true, is it? Simply not true. What is true is that 6 weeks ago, Boris Johnson said that there was no path to military victory for the Taliban, which just shows the incompetence both of our Prime Minister and possibly also of the intelligence. But the fact is that Afghanistan was giving way to the Taliban last week. Kabul fell on Sunday, but it was perfectly obvious last week that the whole of the country was in crisis, and yet Dominic Raab was sunning himself on a beach. That's not just then about optics.
Matt, are you saying he should resign? He should resign. Is that what you're saying today?
What I'm saying is, if we had a Prime Minister who himself had a shred of decency, and if he had other people that he would reliably call on to do a better job, then of course he should go. But like Martin, I do share a concern here, and that is that what really matters is not party politics. It's not about scoring points. What really matters here is saving the lives of people on the ground in Afghanistan. That's British lives, and that's Afghani lives. And if, this big if, by resigning now, that would imperil further lives, then he shouldn't. But before I came on, Tricia, and this is a very important point, before I came on air, I talked to a friend who's been quite a senior civil servant, and she said that the whole setup in government departments, part of the deal is that you can boot someone out very quickly and make a smooth and quick transition of power. Right. And so given that, I'm quite tempted to think that he should do the decent thing now and resign.
And you talk about everybody coming together to make sure no further mistakes are made, and yet we've seen photographs of empty planes flying out. Do you think that's just another highlight of the complete schmozzle, all of the mistakes just compounding themselves?
Well, we live in a country now where, as I said, 6 weeks ago, our Prime Minister said in front of Parliament that there was no military path to victory for the Taliban. This is a government that has messed up on Brexit, it's messed up on coronavirus, and now it's messed up on Afghanistan. And as one Twitter user said yesterday, that's ABC, which leads to D for disaster. However, the logistics on the ground right now, because we were so ill prepared, for whatever reason, and whoever you decide to blame, are clearly immensely difficult. And I don't blame Ben Wallace, who does seem to care about lives on the ground, who does seem to want to get his act together. I don't blame him personally, our Defence Secretary, for what's going on. And from what I understand, if flights are leaving empty, it's because they are coming and going and taking any airspace that they can. It's incredibly difficult, as I understand it, to get aeroplanes off that airstrip, given that other countries, the Dutch, the Germans, the Americans and so forth, are trying to repatriate their own citizens. So this is a crisis, it's a disaster. You could argue this is the fall of the American empire, but I don't blame Ben Wallace or the officials on the ground for what's going on right now. And it's also important to remember, Tricia, if you look at Twitter, that our ambassador in Afghanistan is an absolute hero in all of this. This is a man who is still there. Process the visa applications himself personally. Yeah. These are the people that we should be relying on.
Yeah, so Laurie Bristol is as you say, is doing an amazing job. Martin, coming back to you, I mean, on this show during the week, we've talked about resettling refugees, and as we know, there have already been refugees arriving. Now, it seems, so I can put to all of you, that as far as the media is concerned, and maybe we live in our own little bubble, most of the media are, the headlines like big-hearted Britain and welcome them, what have you. When you actually get phone calls, people are saying, there's a very large group of people who say, we're full. Look at immigration, we were shutting down, we are full. Whatever has happened, we cannot afford to take refugees. Martin?
Well, I mean, we know from bitter experience that the media class is completely out of touch with ordinary people. We saw it with Brexit, we saw it with Donald Trump, and we're seeing that with immigration. It's the biggest topic of our time since Brexit and Afghanistan.
Yeah, but what do you feel? What do you feel?
What I feel is that we have a duty of care to all those who worked and served for us. That includes the translators, the family of them. The Taliban are going around knocking on doors all over the papers today. They're knocking on doors, and anybody who worked against them is in grave peril of losing their lives.
And there is a scheme for them, but we were talking about the people outside it, and that's when people started to get a little bit what I call NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Well, because there is a firm conviction. We can't do anything about dinghies arriving 500 people per day from France. And people, I think, have reached the point where they don't think the government is tough enough on this topic. And there is a sense in the general public that it's not our responsibility to house all the troubled people of the world unless they are in grave, grave danger. And how do we know their status to be truthful when if I was them, I'd be throwing all my documents away and claiming the right thing to get in the country?
All right.